caused some error in the town. A lot of people put together some very strong arguments to why that was a completely inappropriate development. It has significant drainage issues, it has appalling road access, and there are many reasons why it was a completely inappropriate development. Hart District Council refused the permission. In 2016, that developer went to appeal, and the decision was overturned on appeal because there was no local plan. What residents of Yateley have seen, therefore, is developers pushing forward inappropriate development and making it happen in towns where they struggle to park, they struggle to get doctor's appointments, the traffic in the mornings is appalling, etc., etc. So if you talk to the residents of Yateley, what they will say is that we absolutely must not continue to build housing piecemeal in our existing communities. We never get any infrastructure, we never get any facilities, we just put everything that we already have under greater pressure, and it is an adverse effect on the quality of life. We have to do something different than just keep on adding these housing estates. So, the residents of Yateley would say, absolutely, let's have a look at the garden community concept. We've had the conversation with Lord Taylor, who talked about the whole thinking behind it as a concept. It is a much better way of building communities. To be honest with you, the people of Yateley probably wouldn't have a strong view about actually physically where it is. But what we would say is that the garden community approach is the approach we should be taking. We should be investing in it, we should be thinking about it well in advance, and we should be supporting, therefore, this proposal as it is in front of us. As Councillor Radley has already made quite clear, the local planning process will do the whole detailed scrutiny of whether this is actually the best site or not, and other sites may well also be considered for this kind of approach. But we need to understand the approach, we need to adopt a different approach from what we're doing at the moment, and that is why I support this proposal.
Thank you very much. Marek, please.
Thank you. Winchfield Parish Council's position obviously has been well documented over many months and many years. I think it's important that we also remember that we have a little bit of a card trick as well. We all sat down here in December talking about the Murrell Green and Winchfield development, which the two developers to my right here presented. Unbeknown to us at the time, a few days prior, there was a bid declared for Shapley Heath Garden Village, which was presented to government. I think they are both very much the same. During the course of the examination in public, those of us who sat in this room heard Mr. Manning, and eventually in his letter to the council, make it clear of the very great problems that occurred in the area of search, creating, as we know, a donor-type settlement split by the railway, the B3016 and the M3, with a significant amount of land which will never be available for development. So, as you now proceed to progress Shapley Heath Garden Village, and I accept Councillor Quartermain's point, we need to get it right. But let's make sure we're planning to make spending all this money looking at the right side. Shapley Heath has been damned quite seriously by the inspector with many failings. If you're now about to spend £500,000 exploring the same site again, surely it begs questions, because I refer you to paragraph 5.5 of paper H, where you say, in the circumstances, it is not intended that the council should canvass alternative locations for a garden community. How can you possibly proceed with that significant caveat tucked away in the small print, ladies and gentlemen? If you want to have a garden village, and yes, there are some wonderful examples in this country of ours, then for goodness sake, make sure you get the right site and don't spend $500,000 picking on the wrong site, which an examiner has said is unsound. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you have
First of all, the inspector has never found our plan unsound. I think that has to be made absolutely
Policy SS3.
It has suggested that we take out policy SS3 to ensure that we would be found sound, but he didn't actually find the policy unsound in itself. He did question whether we had fully reviewed all the options that led us to that conclusion, and pointed out that there was more work required in that vein. And that work will undoubtedly get done. And if the chairman of the parish council is correct in his assertion that the location of Shapley Heath is not viable for any number of reasons, then that undoubtedly will come to light through the work that we're going to be doing through this initiative. And the sooner that is found, the sooner we will stop and we'll go and say, okay, that doesn't work. We've demonstrated that doesn't work. But if we don't do the research, we won't find out. One of the key differences between Shapley Heath, Morrell Green, or Winchfield, whatever you want to call it, to any other site in the area is that you've got a railway station. And railway stations matter. If you're concerned about your carbon footprint, you are concerned about having to commute by car. So in the future, if we're to make sustainable developments, having a train station as an anchor is a really important point. And you can't say that about any other garden village potential site in the district, and therefore it does warrant having the initial look at, which is what this paper's doing. But if we find it doesn't work for whatever reason, we're going to stop. And you know, we won't be spending all the money on a thing that's not going to fly. We're testing it to see if it will fly, and that's the purpose of this exercise.
Thank you very much. Mr. Carey, you want to come back?
Just two points.
Can I just say this can't be a monologue in yourself and the council, so please. Point from your chair.
Two very important points, I think. One is that the housing numbers that Councillor Radley is talking about as if it's a fixed quantity. I think it's not a fixed quantity. It's clearly driven by, not by need, by housing need, but by capacity of the district. So we at the moment have a population density of about a fifth of Surrey Heath and half of Rushmore, and we are a rural district. But if we create a strategy, a housing strategy, where we've got a capacity to build 10,000 houses in what was previously countryside, then that capacity is going to be used. So the direction of travel of a garden community is that we're going to get more and more densely populated until we catch up with Rushmore and Surrey Heath, and we'll have a massive population. So I think that if you did a proper sort of poll of the residents of Hart, they would say we want to preserve our countryside, and we want to make the housing numbers as small as we can by hanging on to our beautiful trees and countryside and villages and keep the character. So that's the first point. I think the idea of garden villages is actually going to drive up the population of the district unnecessarily. The other point I'd like to make is that I quite agree with James that we've got to plan ahead, and that's very important. But why are we only planning ahead on garden communities and not town centres? Why is it that Fleet is the only town of its size in the whole area which doesn't have a master plan?
Thank you very much. Mr. Birch, you want to provide a technical answer to at least the first part of that?
I'm getting a bit concerned, Chairman, from the knowledge of the fact we're not dealing with the paper and what the prejudice about. It's not about the local plan. It's not about the future of making decisions about the local plan. I'd be very concerned if everyone had that debate. What I'm hearing from, we're straying into a different debate. The paper is, we're being nominated by the government to join the garden village community, and Shapley Heath is the target size in that. And that's what we should be talking about, not about whether it would feed into the local plan. There's a decision made at some point. What we need to get back to the point is, part of the programme, what are we going to do about it? And this report picks up what we're going to do about it. what I wouldn't want you to do, any of you to do, is have a debate about the future planning that we go through a review local plan, because that's starting a debate that's not going to do with this paper tonight. And I'm spending a lot of time sitting here as long as you're listening to the debate, which is very difficult to minute because actually none of it's actually relevant to the paper in front of us. I understand fully what people are saying about the concerns for the future, but can we deal with what's in front of us? Otherwise we are straying into who's committing themselves to what.
Thank you very much. I think, well, you mentioned, oh no, I'm going to send that being directed at me for allowing people to speak their minds. I think we all know that the broader issues around this investigation as regards the committee are concerned to residents in parts of the district. And I find it important they at least have their right to make their points. I thank Councillor Radley for trying to address those points. You might not agree with his answers, but at least it's able to answer your points. We do have a paper in front of us, and if possible, I would like members in particular to talk to the paper. Thank you, Councillor Portman and Radley, for doing so. Anybody else who wishes to speak? Mr. Turner.
Can I make a point about the housing numbers? Because that was a key part of it.
No, because that's not in the paper. This is about us investigating whether we should use the money the government has given us under the Garden Vision Programme. The housing numbers go straight back to local plan point, which we've just been told we shouldn't be doing.
But a key justification for that is that we're going to get more houses thrust upon us, even if it's whether we like it or not. And I'd like to challenge that assertion. The government's current method, called the standard method, has the beauty that if you add up all of the standard methods across the country, it comes to roughly 250,000 houses per annum, which is what the housing demand is. If our local plan had been producing the standard method, then we would have a lower housing requirement. Now, I understand the reasons why the local plan was done as it was done, because we were generally smart. But the housing numbers we've got were based on the standard method, taking away the cap for some unknown reason, adding this 25% on, and then lo and behold, you get to 423 houses per annum. The next time that we're reviewed, will be reviewed under the standard method, and the future housing requirement should actually fall.
Okay. Thank you for that comment. I don't believe that is relevant to what we have in front of us, but thank you very much for turning that off for me. Thank you.
In which case you won't have to do any more development. Great. This is a, you know.
Yeah, well,
we'll all cheer on it.
I've been a councillor in a couple of district councils for a number of years, and I can almost guarantee that generally anything you say, a new government will come in and pull the rug from under you, and your community will expect you to step up to the plate.
I've been prepared for that.
Yeah. Right. Okay. We have a recommendation in front of us. Are there any other members of the council that wish to speak? Councillor Bailey, Stuart.
I am in danger of straying from the conversation, so stare at me if I do.
Staring with the least of your concern.
I think what I'm hearing is the concern that people may have that by going ahead with the work around the garden community, and from some residents I'm hearing the concept of the idea, we're not sure it's in the right place or anything else, but by going ahead with it, it might create some form of momentum or some form of channel where we may end up creating more housing thrust on us and all of that sort of thing. That's what I'm hearing is the concern, or that in some way that this is a sort of a sneaky technique to try and do a planning piece rather than a conceptual piece. And I can understand that concern. If I was living in Winchfield, I probably would be sat up there representing my community as the chairman of Winchfield Council did. It was interesting when there was a comment from Mrs. Stridwick about this council being divided. I've been on the council for a few years now, and people often ask me, what's the division like? Is it a political division in the council? I've never, although it often shows itself that way, the real division on this council is often shown by those who represent a rural part of the district or a semi-urban part of the district, where every party colour you have, and that was shown when we've had votes in the past, to actually look which way councillors vote on things. And when I've looked at this paper in the round and what it is looking to do in terms of the conceptual piece and looking around how you would develop a planned community in the future, if that requirement is needed, I find it very difficult to argue against going ahead and doing that piece of work. I can understand concerns, but for me, living in part of the district which was completely developed by planning appeal, so there is no, I mean, it's not a community sense, but there is no real planned infrastructure, there's no real centre to the community, lots of little centres. The opportunity to actually plan a future community, I think is, we would be foolish not to start that work now, rather than trying to do something in 2 or 3 years' time when the clock's been ticking. So I will support the recommendations in this paper, but I do so listening to the comments that have been made, and with a degree that I understand a lot of the comments and understand some of the concerns that people are making.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bailey. Right, I've got Councillor Ambler and Councillor Forster. At that point, I'm probably going to ask for a summation and a vote. So, Simon, would you like to go? Ed?
Thank you. Yes, I think Mrs. Cridwick made some excellent points. One of which I totally agree with, in that all she sees is people on this council disagreeing and saying what they don't want, rather like another political institution I could mention, but anyway. And unfortunately, when we just go along with everybody's views of what we don't want, we end up in the position we're in now, where for the majority, apart from I think the first year of my time on this council, we don't actually have a plan to fall back on. What I don't want to do is pass on a similar legacy to the next generation of councillors. I think we all accept that if we're going to investigate this programme, and if it's going to be successful, it's going to take an enormous amount of work, and it's going to take a long time. We're talking a number of years, probably 5-6 years, to actually come up with a sensible master plan that delivers a sustainable, well-designed development. And to be quite frank, if it didn't deliver that, having been one of the group being accused of not being open-minded about this, I would not support it if it doesn't achieve what, and to quote the MPPF, the purpose of the planning system is to contribute to the achievement of sustainable development. At a very high level, the objective of sustainable development can be summed up as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And that is key to the whole planning process. And I think this is the first stage in looking at it. And as Councillor Bradley said, if we don't need it, if it's not going to work, then fine, we won't do it. But as it stands at the moment, with this first phase, and just picking up on the point on the land capture value, I think that was a very good point, raised by scrutiny. I think to any plan like this, that is absolutely crucial, because without that, it doesn't, any community wouldn't achieve what it was trying to achieve, which is being well designed and sustainable and well planned. And yes, if we carry on like we are, there was a previous chairman of this council made the comment quite a number of years ago. So, well, it'll all sort itself out if you carry on the way you are, because people will just stop coming to Hart because they won't be able to get out of their drives in the morning. And that is the way it will get to unless we do some proper planning. So I will be supporting on that basis.
Okay, I'm going to call Councillor Forster, then I'm going to ask Councillor Bradley to sum up. Before I do, is there anyone else in the public who hasn't spoken who wishes to speak? No, okay. Right, See, Councillor Forster, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Garden community, Shapley Heath. It all sounds so remote. 2032. It's not. It's Fleet and Hook, Newtown. It's right on our border. Some councillors have been commenting about how wonderful it is that Pale Lane has been defeated. Yet we're now proposing to build 10,000 more homes.
No.
Can I speak without interruption, please, Chairman? Thank you. We're now proposing to build potentially 10,000 new homes in a new town 600 metres from Fleet and from Eltham, less than that from Hook. And we're calling it Shapley Heath so that people don't know where it is. I think that's pretty disingenuous. Councillor Cannell spoke about saving trees. Councillor Radley spoke about the opportunity to cut down trees, bury them, and plant some new ones as being wonderful for carbon capture.
It is, but we're not going to do it.
James, please don't interrupt Councillor Forster.
Is this about this paper?
No, but let him have a say.
All right, okay.
This paper proposes spending £500,000 of our taxpayers' money on something that people don't want, that we don't need, that is completely and utterly hypothetical. Councillor Radley spoke about not wanting to make the same mistakes as he's made repeatedly, the same mistakes that certain political parties around here have made repeatedly in opposing stuff and then finding it's foisted upon them. Fought against QEB, fought against Watery Lane, fought against Grove Farm.
Councillor Forster, if you talk to the document rather than making a political...
Well, I'm referring to comments that were made around this document in justification of it. But I take your point, Chairman. The document talks about spending a lot of money that isn't necessary at this moment on something that the community does not need and will only be delivered many years in the future, instead of using the funds, which are restricted for the council, on things that are going to deliver benefit to the current communities, such as investment in improving the infrastructure for our existing residents, for the town of Fleet, for Hook, for Yakeley. Councillor Corderman, I think it was, talked about, or was it yourself, Chairman, talked about actually doing stuff, it doesn't really matter where it is. I'm sure if this was a proposal to build a garden community on Blackbush, it would be a very different scenario. But we've had this being talked about, our target area, by the Chief Executive. The whole concept of this document is a ridiculous, in my opinion, project to do something that will damage our community. And I would urge any cabinet member who actually values our community to do something about it and vote against this. I'm delighted that this is being streamed, that we have so many members of the public here, and that Councillor Cannell is even videoing me. Thank you for...
You video me.
Sarah.
So that people can see that I am opposed to this, and I hope many others are. But I urge this Cabinet to please vote against this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. Right, I've asked Councillor Radley to sum up. Councillor Cannell, I would like you not to respond to this.
Can I not come back on something?
I'd rather
He
you
said,
did.
as a councillor for Fleet West,
No.
he believes that the residents don't want to see this. I think he's completely out of touch with his residents.
Sarah, I'm going to ask you to be quiet.
Okay.
You are descending into the hyperbole that Councillor Forster submitted to us, and it doesn't do you any credit to get down the ditch with him, whether the Prime Minister of Johnson is dead in it or not. James, please sum up, then we'll move to the vote.
I'm going to actually refer back to the QEB because I think it helps sum this up quite nicely. It might surprise Councillor Forster to know, although I have actually brought it up many times before, that the development that sits on that site today, when it came to planning committee, I, as ward councillor, moved the motion to grant. I moved the motion to grant the development that had become Crookham Park. And that is because, having originally had it thrown out, gone to the appeal and won the appeal, we actually had a developer who came back and was prepared to work with us, and we actually made that development far better than it ever was going to be. There are other developments, like Grove Farm, which residents do find to be an anathema. And I have no shame in having, at those planning committees, having looked at those applications before us, having thrown them out. I am dismayed that they got granted as appeal. They get granted as appeal because of housing numbers, which is the point that's been going around this debate, but is actually not on this paper. The other thing that's not on this paper is our proposal to build 10,000 houses. We're not proposing to build 10,000 houses. We're looking at the feasibility and the design characteristics and governance of a proposal to possibly build 5,000, which is not 10,000. So I dispute that point as well. It's been discussed for a while now. I think we're clear cut on what this is. This is a paper about pressing forward not a development, but pressing forward a design initiative and leveraging money that's been given to us by the government to see if we can do something that actually has merit, has value, that can generate a community that people want to live in, that generates a community that deals with the obligation we may have in the future to provide more homes, but does it in a way that works. And if it doesn't work, or if those houses don't come forward through the national process on which they get given to us, then it won't get done. Let's emphasise this again. If we don't need it, because we don't have to build the houses, it won't get done. If, having evaluated it, it looks like it doesn't work, or it's not of a very high standard that gives us a garden community, it won't get done. How many times have we done things which should never have happened because we didn't have a fallback plan that actually was fit for purpose? This is our opportunity to look into developing something that is fit for purpose. Let's get on and do it. And let's do it with pride, because I think when people understand why we're doing it, very few people are going to complain.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, we've had a good, robust debate. Thank you all for coming along, participating and witnessing. We'll put that to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendations as amended, please show. Okay, so that's unanimous from the Cabinet. That's that item done. Thank you all very much for the contributions you all made. We now move to the next item on the agenda, which is item 12, which is the Cabinet Work Programme, paper I. Okay, so page 1 largely deals with the 4 items we have tonight, and then goes down to the housing paperwork spending next month. Are there any items on page 2 where the date might have slipped at all? Anyone aware? No? Okay.
So, sorry, Chairman,
Yeah.
have the changes been put in there that are due to occur? Just things like, I know that the parking one had been moved a month